Today we're diving into the world of tariffs and quotas, two powerful tools governments use to influence domestic markets. These trade barriers can shape the way goods move across borders, affecting everything from prices to the choices available to consumers. By understanding how tariffs and quotas work, we can better grasp their impact on our everyday lives and the broader economy. Let's start by exploring what these terms mean and why countries might choose to implement them in the first place. Tariffs are essentially taxes imposed on imported goods. When a country places a tariff on a product, it increases the cost of that item for consumers and businesses within the country. The main goal is to make imported goods less competitive compared to locally produced items. This can encourage consumers to buy domestic products, supporting local industries. However, tariffs can also lead to higher prices and limited choices for consumers. Let's see how this plays out in real-world market. Quotas, on the other hand, are limits on the quantity of a specific good that can be imported into a country. Instead of raising prices directly, quotas restrict the supply of foreign goods, which can also drive up prices and reduce consumer choice. Quotas are often used to protect domestic industries from foreign competition, ensuring that local producers maintain a certain share of the market. But like tariffs, quotas can have unintended consequences for both consumers and businesses. Governments implement tariffs for several reasons. One major motivation is to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. By making imported goods more expensive, tariffs give local businesses a better chance to compete. Tariffs can also generate revenue for the government, which can be used to fund public services. Additionally, tariffs may be used as a bargaining tool in international trade negotiations. However, these benefits often come with trade-offs, such as higher prices for consumers. Quotas are another tool governments use to manage trade. By limiting the amount of a product that can be imported, quotas help domestic producers maintain their market share. This can be especially important for industries that are vital to a country's economy or national security. Quotas can also be used to prevent market flooding, where an excess of cheap imports could harm local businesses. However, quotas can also reduce competition and lead to higher prices for consumers. Both tariffs and quotas are designed to benefit domestic producers. By making imported goods more expensive or less available, these measures give local businesses a competitive edge. This can lead to increased production, more jobs, and greater investment in domestic industries. However, the protection provided by tariffs and quotas can sometimes reduce the incentive for local companies to innovate or improve efficiency, since they face less competition from abroad. While tariffs and quotas can help domestic producers, they often have the opposite effect on consumers. Higher prices and fewer choices are common outcomes, as imported goods become more expensive or harder to find. This can be especially challenging for families on tight budgets who may have to pay more for everyday items. In some cases, domestic products may also rise in price due to reduced competition, further impacting consumers. Tariffs and quotas both tend to increase the prices of affected goods. When imports are taxed or limited, domestic producers can raise their prices without fear of being undercut by cheaper foreign products. This price increase can ripple through the economy, affecting related industries and even leading to inflation in some cases. The overall effect is that consumers pay more, while domestic producers may see higher profits. By restricting imports, tariffs and quotas alter the balance of supply and demand in the domestic market. With fewer foreign goods available, the supply decreases, which can push prices up. At the same time, domestic producers may increase output to meet demand, but this isn't always enough to offset the reduced imports. The result is often a new market equilibrium, with higher prices and potentially less variety for consumers. One of the main arguments in favor of tariffs and quotas is that they can stimulate growth in domestic industries. By reducing foreign competition, local businesses have more opportunities to expand, hire workers, and invest in new technologies. This can lead to a stronger, more resilient economy over time. However, it's important to consider whether this growth is sustainable without ongoing protection from trade barriers. When one country imposes tariffs or quotas, other countries may respond with their own trade barriers. This can lead to a cycle of retaliation where each side raises barriers in response to the other. Such trade disputes can escalate quickly, harming both economies and making it harder for businesses to operate internationally. The risk of retaliation is an important factor for policymakers to consider when setting trade policy. Modern economies are deeply interconnected, with goods and components often crossing multiple borders before reaching consumers. Tariffs and quotas can disrupt these global supply chains, causing delays, shortages, and increased costs for businesses. This can make it harder for companies to deliver products on time and may even force them to relocate production to avoid trade barriers. Tariffs and quotas can reduce consumer welfare by limiting access to affordable goods and reducing variety. When consumers have fewer choices and must pay higher prices, their overall satisfaction and purchasing power decline. This can have broader economic effects, as reduced consumer spending may slow economic growth and hurt other sectors of the economy. Tariffs can be a significant source of revenue for governments, especially in countries that rely heavily on imports. This revenue can be used to fund public services, infrastructure, or other government priorities. However, over-reliance on tariff income can create challenges, especially if trade volumes decline due to higher barriers. Implementing quotas involves administrative costs, as governments must monitor and enforce import limits. This can require significant resources, including staff, technology, and oversight mechanisms. These costs can offset some of the benefits of quotas, making them less efficient than other trade policy tools. Tariffs and quotas can distort markets by interfering with the natural forces of supply and demand. When prices are artificially raised or supply is limited, resources may not be allocated efficiently. This can lead to overproduction in protected industries and underproduction in others, reducing overall economic welfare. Well-known example of tariffs in action is the use of steel tariffs by various countries. By imposing tariffs on imported steel, governments aim to protect their domestic steel industries from foreign competition. While this can help local producers, it often leads to higher costs for industries that use steel, such as construction and manufacturing, which may ultimately be passed on to consumers. Agricultural quotas are another common example. Many countries limit the import of certain farm products to protect their own farmers. While this can help maintain stable incomes for domestic producers, it may also lead to higher food prices and less variety for consumers. In some cases, quotas can even lead to shortages if domestic production can't meet demand. Trade barriers like tariffs and quotas create winners and losers. Domestic producers and workers in protected industries often benefit, while consumers and industries that rely on imported goods may lose out. The overall impact depends on how these effects balance out across the economy. Policymakers must weigh these trade-offs carefully when designing trade policy. Over the long term, tariffs and quotas can shape the structure of the economy. While they may provide short-term relief for struggling industries, they can also discourage innovation and efficiency. In some cases, prolonged protection can lead to industries becoming dependent on government support, making it harder for them to compete globally. When tariffs or quotas make certain goods more expensive or scarce, consumers may substitute other products. For example, if imported cars become too costly, buyers might choose domestic models instead. This shift in demand can benefit local producers but may also reduce consumer satisfaction if alternatives don't meet their needs or preferences. High tariffs and strict quotas can sometimes encourage smuggling and black market activity. When legal imports are too expensive or limited, some businesses and consumers may turn to illegal channels to obtain goods. This undermines the effectiveness of trade barriers and can create additional challenges for law enforcement. Trade barriers can strain relationships between countries. When one nation imposes tariffs or quotas, trading partners may view this as unfair or hostile, leading to diplomatic tensions. In some cases, disputes over trade barriers can escalate into broader conflicts, affecting cooperation on other important issues. World Trade Organization (WTO) plays a key role in regulating tariffs and quotas. The WTO sets rules for international trade and helps resolve disputes between countries. By promoting fair and open trade, the WTO aims to reduce the negative effects of trade barriers and encourage economic growth worldwide. Instead of tariffs and quotas, governments can use other policies to support domestic industries such as subsidies, tax incentives, or investment in research and development. These alternatives can help local businesses compete without raising prices for consumers or disrupting global trade. However, each approach has its own advantages and challenges. Let's look at the auto industry as a case study. When countries impose tariffs or quotas on imported cars, domestic automakers often benefit from reduced competition. However, this can also lead to higher prices for consumers and may limit access to the latest models and technologies. The overall impact depends on how these policies are implemented and how the market responds. Textile industry is another sector often affected by tariffs and quotas. By restricting imports, governments aim to protect local textile producers and preserve jobs. However, this can also lead to higher clothing prices and less variety for consumers. In some cases, trade barriers may encourage domestic innovation, but they can also reduce pressure to improve efficiency. Tariffs and quotas can have unintended consequences, such as encouraging inefficiency, creating black markets, or sparking trade wars. Policymakers must carefully consider these risks when designing trade policies. Balancing the needs of domestic producers with the interests of consumers and the broader economy is a complex challenge. In recent years, many countries have re-examined their trade policies, with some increasing tariffs and quotas to protect domestic industries. Others have moved toward freer trade, reducing barriers to encourage competition and innovation. These trends reflect ongoing debates about the best ways to balance economic growth, consumer welfare, and national interests. Wrap up: tariffs and quotas are powerful tools that can shape domestic markets in significant ways. While they can protect local industries and generate government revenue, they also come with costs such as higher prices and reduced consumer choice. The challenge for policymakers is to find the right balance, supporting domestic growth while ensuring that consumers and the broader economy continue to thrive in an interconnected world.